and Uncle Joe, as we call him, JT you call him, he was my uncle, and my mother was Tony Byrne, Antonia, and was his sister, and he had 4 sisters and one brother. He was born in Wicklow, and he was born in the Bridge Hotel in Wicklow town, and he was the first of the children of William Martin Byrne and Mary Ellen Byrne. And Mary Ellen Byrne, her father was Thomas Murphy, who leased the hotel at that time from the Halpin family. They were nieces of Robert Halpin. Antonia, my mother, she was my mother. She was born in 1907, and she married Patrick Howard, a young engineer who had come from Cork. And the story that we heard, anyhow, is that he came and he stayed in the Bridge Hotel, and that's where he met my mother. When I was young, in the early years, well, maybe when I was 4 or 5, my family moved to Kerry at that time, so we would not have met Uncle Joe, as we would call him later. Occasionally he would come to visit us in Kerry. He always kept contact with his sisters, one of them, which was my mother, and his other sister Eileen. He always had great contact with members of his own family. He was Uncle Joe to everybody, and visited different family members from time to time over the years. Well, my memory was that he was always taking photographs, and I suppose in the early years, I don't know what sort of a camera he had, but in those times the early ones would have been the box camera, probably Kodak, and anytime we met him from then on and from years later, he was always taking photographs. And then in 1955 I came to live in Wicklow, and I went to school in Wicklow, and I stayed with Uncle Joe and Aunt Mairead for 5 years when I went to school here in Wicklow. And so I lived with them for that length of time, from 1955 to 1960 when I left school. But during that time, the memory was that Uncle Joe was always taking photographs, and one occasion we were down in near Dromoland Castle, and he said, "I want to get a photograph of the castle," but he said, "Mary, will you kneel down there in the grass so he could get a good view of the castle, not of me?" And but anyhow, that was he was always humorous. He was a humorous character, and it was great fun out of people and talking with people. Yeah, my mother did tell us that when they were young, she remembers black and tans coming into the hotel, which would have been, I'd say, in 1917 or 1918. My mother was 17, I suppose, at that time. But she remembers they were looking for Uncle Joe, or they were looking for Joseph Byrne, as he originally was known. He changed his name to O'Byrne later on because he was involved with anything to do with Irish and the Gaelic language and Gaelic League and that sort of thing. His own father was a member of the Gaelic League, the old Gaelic League, even when my grandfather lived in England for some time. So I think he inherited that aspect of Irish and Irishness. And I came across, that was that time, yeah. And then I wouldn't have known how he came to be imprisoned. I think he was imprisoned on the Murrah, but I'd have to ask some other historians. They might know more about that. I think there was a place where they kept these kind of young fellows prisoner. And of course, in those days, again, a lot of this story I heard from my mother, that his mother was praying to every saint in heaven for the release of him from prison. And actually he did he was released in 1922. And he also, the other aspect of him in Olaigh and hEireann, that he was a colleague of Barry, and they were together, yes, when they were separated, when their apartment or flat or digs where they were was raided. And it was described by some friends of Uncle Joe here in Wicklow. He told them about this aspect of Kevin Barry, and Kevin Barry were in this digs, I think, because they were both studying in the university. Well, he was studying in UCD, engineering. And so a lot of the friends that he knew from that time in UCD, among them was Kevin Barry. And they were raided, and the story was that Kevin Barry got separated from the rest of them, and you know the rest of the story about Kevin Barry.